Hi, everyone, and welcome back to the Social Work Bubble podcast. I'm your host, Laura, a licensed master social worker here in New York. And today we welcome a special guest, Lainy Barrick, an LCSW, a school social worker in Utah, who will be talking about all her experience in school social work, as well as some Utah-specific issues. So thank you, Lainy, for coming on today.
Yeah, you're welcome. I'm excited to be here.
Excited to have you. Now, for those listening, before we get started, don't forget to like, share, and follow the podcast on whatever platform you're listening on, and we will dive in. So, Lainy, can you introduce yourself to the listeners, including your background and what you're currently doing?
Sure. So I'm a school social worker at a middle and high school in Provo,
Mhm.
Utah. It's a charter school, and so a little bit different from like the public school districts. We
Mhm.
are still a public school, so anyone can come here. This is my fifth school year at this school as a school
Great.
social worker. I worked a little bit in private practice before doing this, but for the most part, I've just stuck in school social work.
Wonderful. Was there what initially led you to social work in general?
I kind of feel like social work chose me a long time
Hmm.
ago. I knew I wanted to help people. I knew I wanted to just help people be empowered. And
Hmm.
I'm a huge believer and advocate in hope. And it's just something that I wanted to help give people was hope.
Yeah,
And so that led me to social work.
absolutely. Anything that led you to school social work in particular?
Yeah, so I actually wanted to be a therapist whenever I started my social work degree.
Hmm.
And then in my master's program, I did an internship in school social work. I just kind of landed there. I didn't necessarily
Yeah.
pick it. And I was in middle school and two high schools, and I just really fell in love with it.
Hmm.
Like at first, I wasn't too sure, but just as the school year went on, I just learned to love it. And
Yeah.
that just kind of changed my career path. And so I'm still in it.
That's so exciting. I feel like school social work, from what I understand about it, it's a pretty good balance of still being able to be clinical, but then also having a lot of other social work elements and parts to it.
Oh, for sure. Yeah,
Mhm.
we're gonna do a little bit of everything, which makes it really fun and sometimes kind of stressful.
Hmm. Definitely. It's a lot. What's, for those listening that maybe are interested in pursuing school social work, what's that typical path to get there? Are there any specific things you need outside of like the social work degree or license?
I think that kind of depends on the state you're in.
Right.
So,
Okay.
like some schools or some states like there to be an additional certification of like a certified school social worker.
Gotcha.
Here where I'm at, there's nothing else required.
Oh,
You
great.
just got to get your foot in the door and you're good.
Hmm. Absolutely. What does that look like for you? Because I've heard a lot of times, at least in the New York area, getting your foot in the door in a school or in a hospital is really, really tough. So, what did that look like for you?
Um, I got really lucky. So the school that I work at, they had just got funding for school social workers to be here.
Oh,
So I'm the first school social worker they've had. And
oh my
so I
gosh.
interviewed with them and I talked about my internship and just all my experience. And I guess I just happened to be the best candidate. So
Hmm.
I just got lucky in that way, in that they didn't have a previous school social worker to compare to.
Hmm.
So that's how I got my foot in the door.
Exciting. Oh, well, what was it like to be the first school social worker at this place?
It's been awesome because I've
Hmm.
had a lot of freedom with creating programs, doing like school initiatives, and just like
Hmm.
creating the role and just kind of running with it. And it's
Yeah,
been nice to not have shoes to fill.
absolutely. You really have like a fresh slate to just dive into whatever you need and
Yeah,
any things that you want to create.
yeah, a lot of room for creativity.
That's so exciting. One of the best parts about social work is that creativity piece.
It's so true. Yeah.
Oh, good. Now, in your typical work week, what usually happens in the life of a school social worker?
Well, one of the beauties of it is that you never know what's going to happen from day to day
Yes.
and week to week. Typically, I have a caseload of students for counseling. And
Hmm.
so I call students down throughout the day for weekly
Okay.
counseling. And outside of that, students can come down anytime. So every day, pretty much, we have students coming down who might be in crisis, like they might be
Hmm.
having suicidal thoughts or other harmful thoughts, or they might just be wanting to talk.
Hmm.
Um, Students might be coming down with just hard things going on in their lives, or there might be a crisis in the classroom that I'm called out to. There might be a situation that I'm asked to help with, such as like a peer mediation, or just a student having a meltdown in the gym and they're having a panic attack. Other things are usually talking with parents, with families, helping connect them to outside resources, talking with teachers or admin, and just kind of being a part of the team that helps the student. And meetings with our other social worker at the elementaries, working with interns, paperwork, working with outside agencies, just a little bit of everything from week to week.
Covering it all. Oh my gosh. It definitely keeps you on your toes then.
It does, yeah. That's one thing I like about it. Every day is different.
Wow. So you have your own counseling caseload, but it sounds like then your caseload is kind of just all students, really.
Basically.
Okay.
Yeah, I have students that I try to do counseling with once a week because they need that attention. They have things to work through.
Yeah.
And I try to cap it off at 40 a week. And then students can just come out their own free will. So I don't always get to every student every week.
Right. So I know that doesn't seem really possible to do. Oh, wow. Okay. Do you have a particular part that you like the most about school social work?
I just love being a part of the change process. Like working with the kids and helping them just get better, helping them to improve themselves, and like seeing that change, seeing them be happier, and like because of the work they put in, I just like being the small part of that process.
Yeah.
It's really rewarding to see that.
Yeah. Because also, I mean, school is a place where, I mean, young people, they're there so much, like the majority of their time, really. And so to be able to have so much face time and really see a lot of what's going on for them and to see the change that's there, it's really exciting.
Yeah, I feel like schools are often like the first line of defense. Like it's where problems are usually seen first.
Yeah.
Or where a lot of kids get help where they normally can't get help. Like I meet with kids whose parents work all day during normal like therapy hours, so they can't really take their kids to therapy, or they don't have the funds for it. And so it's nice for me to be here to be like, hey, well, we can meet that need here in school. And then parents don't have to worry about it. It's just really convenient and easy.
Yeah. Absolutely. That's huge because I think accessibility to social workers, to mental health treatment, it's such a big issue. So to have that right there where kids are always in school anyways, I mean, is really, really important.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I think every school should have a school social worker.
How many school social workers do you feel would be helpful? Because is just one overwhelming? Do you feel like you need a team? What do you think about that?
Well, I kind of have a team. We always have interns because there's just too much work for just me at this campus.
Yeah.
And so the interns are split between my campus, which is 6 through 12, and then the elementary campuses. So we do kind of have a team in that way. Technically, the ratio is supposed to be one school social worker per every 250 students.
Yeah.
But I don't think that is found anywhere.
That's what I've heard.
Yeah. So I think if there's one on campus full time, then that school's doing pretty good.
Okay, wonderful. Do you feel like students know about school social worker and that like you're available to them, or what's that process been like for you to get kids to understand I'm here and this is what I'm here for?
Yeah, I work really hard to advertise that, and I work hard to do a lot of outreach. I do mental wellness month every year, and there's a lot of emphasis on, this is who I am, this is what I'm here for. Every kid in the school gets a mental health kit every year, and my info's in there. I try to like be present in the school. I have good relationships with all the teachers, so they advocate for me in their classrooms.
Great.
I have students bring in their friends down sometimes. Sometimes I'll like make a little post on their homework software that they use and just be like, hey, if you're feeling these things, just know there's someone in the building to help you. That's me.
Oh, that's great.
And sometimes I'll like put something in the newsletter, home to parents. So I try everything to help students and families know that I'm here.
Yeah.
So yeah, so that part is really important to me.
That's huge. You mentioned too the relationships with teachers. And I'm glad you did because this is something I've always wondered about is just navigating those different relationships because it's not only teachers and students, you have parents, you have the administration and other staff that you work with. What's it like to navigate so many different relationships in one place?
It sometimes it's tricky. You
Mm-hmm.
know, the priority is the students and their safety and their confidentiality. And so with any other relationship, I always keep in mind that like my number one priority is protecting and advocating for the students.
Mm-hmm.
I really value having a good relationship with teachers
Yeah.
because if a teacher trusts me, then they'll send students to me when they're struggling.
Mm-hmm.
And I want the teachers to know, like, oh, okay, I can send this person to Lainy
Mm-hmm.
because they're having a hard time, and to trust that like the student's going somewhere helpful.
Yeah.
Um, and with admin, like they know that they can pull me into meetings, pull me into teams to help students. It, yeah, every relationship is a little bit different. It's important to have good relationships with parents
Mm-hmm.
so that they also trust me. Um, yeah, it's just kind of a navigate as you go kind of
Yeah,
thing, but
definitely.
just being professional, maintaining confidentiality, and just like, always trying to be helpful and empathetic is
Yeah,
important too.
that's huge. Some of the tenets of social work right there.
Yeah, for
Good.
sure.
Have you ever had any kind of pushback or have you had to give feedback to teachers or to administration or anything?
Um, I don't get a lot of pushback from teachers and admin.
Good.
I've worked really hard to gain their trust, and I try
Mhm.
to have a good relationship with every faculty member in the building.
Yeah.
I have had a lot of pushback from parents,
Mm,
and I just come at it from the angle of like, I just want to help you and your
yeah.
family and your student. And it's pretty rare that there are times when we can't come to a compromise and we don't end up forming a good relationship.
Hmm. Sure. What kind of issues come up where you notice there's some pushback from parents?
Um, oh, there's a variety. Some parents don't believe in mental health.
Yeah.
And so they think their student struggling just isn't real.
Hmm.
And that's really hard because I can see it, teachers can see it. And so sometimes the pushback is just, I don't believe you,
Hmm.
my kid just needs to toughen up.
Mm,
And it's just a matter of like educating and just trying to like help them see what's going on.
yeah.
Um, Sometimes the pushback is just connected to other things like religion or
Mhm.
just the parents want to have full control over what their student is receiving.
Hmm.
Um, it just varies.
Right. I imagine that's tough because when I worked with like kids and teens, I think one of the harder parts to navigate was the confidentiality aspect, and
Oh, yes.
especially with teenagers, where obviously to keep that rapport, you have to respect like their privacy and everything. But parents were constantly asking me questions like how did it go? What did you talk about? Like all this different stuff. What has that been like for you?
Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up because I have had some pushback with that.
Hmm.
Um, well, in the consent form that parents sign, like it explains that in the consent form. And I always just tell parents, like, you know, I can't talk about these things, but if
Hmm.
whenever there's a safety issue, like you're the first one to know immediately.
Yeah.
And sometimes I'll say really vague things like, oh, we've been talking about stress or working on self-esteem, but I never disclose the actual things the students say.
Right.
And the students know that. I always explain this to them like in the very first session.
Hmm.
And some parents they just really struggle with it sometimes.
Yeah.
But, hopefully that is their experience if they take their student to a therapist in the community as well.
Hmm. Absolutely. It kind of goes back to what you said earlier, is leading with that empathy and that compassion. Because I mean, parents are people too. And even though
Yeah,
there
for
might be
sure. Yeah.
there might be a disconnect. I mean, there's a disconnect for a reason, and we can kind of lead with that education and compassion piece as best we can. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Yeah. Even just something as simple as like, yeah, you're right. This is frustrating. I get
Mm-hmm.
it, but I'm bound by the law.
Yeah.
A lot of times parents will like, they'll get it,
Mm-hmm.
they'll understand.
Absolutely. Oh, wow. Have you had a lot of interaction with like child protective services at all? Because I think when I was an undergrad, I did one of my field placements in like a child advocacy program. And there, like we worked with CPS and we worked with schools a lot. And I'm wondering, like what that experience has been like, if at all.
Yeah, I've had a lot of interaction. I make a lot of reports throughout the year. I
Mm-hmm.
usually average anywhere from like 25 to 35 reports.
Wow.
Yeah. And it's, some are very serious, some are
Mhm.
not. But I do have a lot of interaction with CPS. We've had just kind of like some miracle cases where kids were really delivered out of a really harmful situation,
Yeah.
which is so great to see.
Oh, that's huge.
And, I've sat in on interviews because the student requested it. I'm kind of like the liaison a lot of times
Yeah.
of just between CPS and the student at the school.
Mm-hmm.
So I've had a lot of interaction. I have had pushback from parents about that,
Oh, sure.
calling very upset that that report was made.
Mm-hmm.
Um, yeah,
Yeah. You do what you got to do.
exactly. Yeah, the student safety is number one,
Mm-hmm.
and if a student is being harmed, like I can't ignore that.
Yeah.
I have
How
to
are
do what it
students with
takes.
that? Do you ever get pushback from students for having to make a report?
Sometimes,
Mm-hmm.
yeah. I and I always explain at the very beginning when I first meet with a student, like, here are the things that I can't keep a secret.
Yeah.
And this is what I have to do if you tell me those things. And most of the time, when a student does tell me those things, I'll tell them, like, hey, this is really big. I can't keep this a secret
Mm-hmm.
because I have to protect your safety.
Yeah.
And usually the student is understanding and they get it. And usually it strengthens our relationship
Mm-hmm.
and they'll ask questions. I'm just kind of there for them through the process. And so usually students take it well.
Yeah.
If I feel like telling a student is going to like jeopardize their safety, then I don't tell them.
Understandable. Yeah. Oh, good. I found too, like so often, once we have that initial conversation, letting kids know and teenagers know, like, this is part of my job, like, this is at what point I would have to report these different things. When they come to you, they know that, and so
Yeah.
often it's just them also seeking safety and support in that way.
Yeah. And I have had several students come to me and be like, I have to tell you something that doesn't seem like it's okay. And
Mm,
they'll tell me, and I'll be like, okay, yeah, I do have to report that.
yeah.
And I do have students too who are like, something really scary happened, but I know if I tell you, I'm going to report it. I mean, you're going to report it, so I don't want to tell
Mm,
you, and we'll talk about it. So you kind of see like all parts of the spectrum.
yeah, absolutely. Um, Kind of going back because you're at a charter school, and I don't know if you really have experience to compare it to, but what are those differences being a school social worker in a charter school versus like a different kind of setting?
Um, that's kind of hard for me to answer
Yeah.
because I've only done my internship at a public school,
Hmm.
and then I've worked here the rest of the time as a school social worker.
Okay.
But what I hear from others is that there's a lot more crisis. And because there's a lot more crisis, often social workers have a lot smaller caseload of weekly counseling kids.
Okay.
So that's what I've heard the most.
Yeah.
So I'm really grateful to have that opportunity to dive deeper with a lot of the
Hmm.
kids here.
Absolutely. That's meaningful to them too, to be able to know that they have
Yeah,
that kind of time and relationship. They're not just going to be rushed off to so you can move on to the next thing.
right. Yeah.
Good. What do you notice are some of the biggest challenges in school social work right now?
Uh, oh, goodness. I think parents are a challenge.
Hmm.
Um, just some parents are not supportive, or some parents just kind of struggle to know how to be a parent.
Hmm.
And, some parents are so busy, they're working two jobs, just trying to keep things afloat.
Yeah.
So parents are hard, but also parents can really just make all the difference. I
Hmm.
see some amazing supportive parents. Sorry, my camera's kind of glitching.
Oh, that's all right.
Okay. um, so that's one of the hardest things is parents. And whenever I can't do anything more to help a student and they're still struggling,
Hmm.
then like that's really hard. Like, okay, I've done everything I can do,
Hmm.
and like what's needed is not available right now.
Yeah.
Because students really need a team. I'm just part of a team.
Hmm.
So that has been a challenge. And I feel like just every school year, it just gets harder for kids because there's just so many things
Yeah.
around them. Social media is really hard, and just the world we live in gets harder to be in.
Mm-hmm.
Kids just have a lot of things coming at them.
Yeah, absolutely. Do you ever notice that? Because something I noticed is it just seems like a lot of kids are struggling to have any kind of hope or any kind of like positive outlook because of how things are and because of just how things have progressed in a really hopeless, negative way. Have you found that to be the case, or have you found it like kids are able to garner something to hold on to?
I found that to be the case with a lot of kids. Yeah.
Hmm.
Because so many kids are aware of what's going on some level in
Yeah.
the world or in the country. Like a lot of kids, they kind of keep up on things. And for a lot of them, it is hard to have hope.
Hmm.
And, I've had kids say things like, what's it going to be like when, I want to have a family, or when I want to have a career?
Hmm.
And they're just kind of like, what's the point?
Yeah. Yeah. That's so tough too, but I mean, that's why social work is so important because we can't solve all the world problems, but
Right.
we can be that listening ear to just like validate and be there and, help maybe solve some of those smaller things that we have control over. Mm,
Yeah.
okay. Now, what have you noticed are the biggest rewards for you?
The biggest rewards are just seeing the change,
Mm-hmm.
being part of the change in students. When I can witness the student going from being really depressed and just being really hard on themselves to
Mm-hmm.
feeling joy and being able to show themselves self-compassion, like that's a huge win.
Yeah,
That's just incredible to me to witness that.
absolutely. Oh, it's so exciting. It's stuff like that I think keeps us in the work and kind of keeps that passion going when it's so easy to get overwhelmed and burnt out and we can just lean into all the things that are going wrong, but it's those moments that are just like, yes, we have a win, things are going okay.
Yeah. Yeah. Like I love it whenever a student comes in for another session and they're like, oh, I did the homework you gave me. So I always give homework at the end of sessions.
Hmm.
And they're like, and it went so well and it worked. And there's just like a change from session to session. Like that just warms my heart.
Yeah. Oh, that's so great. Now, I mean, you're with grades 6 through 12. What are some interventions or strategies you've used that have been particularly helpful with that age group?
Um, well, this is kind of a no-brainer for like
Mhm.
everyone in the mental health field, but just being that safe space,
Oh, yeah.
like that non-judgmental, you can say anything and it will be met with support kind of
Mhm.
safe space goes such a long way. And just
Yeah.
being that listening ear. I found that to be the number one thing. Just giving them that space and being that person. Because a
Mhm.
lot of kids don't have that anywhere else.
Yeah.
There are kids where I'm the only positive adult relationship they have,
Mhm.
and that just changes their world. Beyond that, I've found that diving into their core beliefs and
Mhm.
helping them change the negative core beliefs into better ones and healthy ones, and using and like helping them change their self-talk, I've found that
Mhm.
to be just a game changer for them.
Yeah.
It changes their thoughts, their feelings, and it can just be life changing for some of the
Mhm.
kids.
That's huge. Love CBT.
Uh-huh.
Okay. Oh, that's great. Yeah, that is true because I think with young people too, I found it's nice to have something tangible, where they can like
Yeah.
go home and continue to work on it and kind of know, oh, these are my core beliefs, or this is what I can tell myself instead, where they feel more in control of it versus like other kinds of therapy.
Yeah, for sure. And we'll get really specific and, like I'll write down their belief and what they want
Hmm.
to change it to and their self-talk they're going to practice. And then they take that home and like they know exactly what they're doing the next week.
Hmm.
And so like having that specificity is really helpful too.
Yeah. Oh, I love it. Wonderful. Now, I mean, getting Utah specific, what are some Utah policies that you know of that have really been either helpful or unhelpful in the work that you do?
So one that's been helpful, and this is a very recent change as of I think October last year,
Oh, wow.
is
Okay.
that school social workers can now do therapy in schools. Um,
Wow, exciting.
and we're not like at that change yet, but it gives us a lot more power
Hmm.
and I don't know if validity is the right word, but it just kind of gives us like more power and freedom
Yeah.
to help the students. And so that's been really awesome, is just like having that in our toolbox.
Hmm.
So that's probably the biggest thing that comes to mind with that question.
Yeah, that's huge because it does kind of go back to that accessibility piece we were talking about, where, I mean,
Yeah,
if students are able to have access to therapy while they're in school, especially if parents are an issue, like you can still, to have that resource is life-changing.
right. Yeah. And almost any place you call here, there's a wait list that's for several weeks and sometimes for a month or two.
Yeah, absolutely. Oh, wow. How exciting. And that's a recent change.
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
That's wonderful. Now, in Utah schools in particular, do you notice any particular challenges statewide amongst different schools or that school social workers are having to deal with?
Yeah, I do notice a few challenges. Utah is, well, yeah, Utah in general, and especially Provo, where I'm at,
Hmm.
is very saturated with religion, and it
Hmm.
really defines the culture here.
Yeah.
And so I've seen that help and hurt. Um,
Hmm.
Sometimes that can be a hindrance in just restricting what a student can do, or impacting how a parent handles the student if
Hmm.
they want to do something outside of religious beliefs, or if they develop their own beliefs. Like sometimes that culture can be harmful.
Yeah.
So that's probably the biggest Utah specific thing, is
Hmm.
just the way the culture is with religion.
Hmm.
Because yeah, sometimes that leads to more judgment, more
Hmm.
exclusivity. I've seen like friend groups here where they're kind of split down the middle, of some are part of the religion and some are not,
Hmm.
and that can create conflict.
Right. Oh, wow. Lots of tension there.
Yeah, and a lot of parents have very strong opinions on what should or shouldn't be taught in school, which
Hmm.
kind of stems from their beliefs and their religion.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's very like all mixed together,
Hmm.
which is tough.
Yeah. Yeah, it's interesting because I found the same thing with religion is so often we're like processing and trying to unravel religious trauma, but then also seeing, okay, in some ways, like religion and spirituality can be really helpful and a great coping skill and guiding post for some people. But
Yeah,
I mean, it's a lot when it's in that kind of space and it can feel very polarizing.
yeah. For some students, it's a huge strength, and then
Mhm.
for some, you're right, it's like trauma. Like I
Mhm.
have a lot of my students are LGBTQ students, and some of
Yeah.
those students are so terrified to tell their parents, like to
Mm.
come out to their parents, because they're just afraid that they'll be kicked out, or
Yeah.
that they'll be judged so harshly, or be forced to go to therapy, or something like
Mhm.
that. And it's just heartbreaking.
Yeah. Yeah. Another reason why we love school social workers is because like that it gives those kids that safe place that they would not otherwise
Exactly.
have. And I mean, schools are so much a hub of the community where, I mean, if we're able to really fill it with resources and support, it can just be incredibly changing.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I've had so many students come out to me, and I was the first adult they came out to.
Wow.
And just last year, we formed kind of like an all-inclusive club during lunch,
Hmm.
where anyone can come, and it just immediately filled up with LGBTQ students. And so
Uh,
they have a space to just be with other kids,
hmm.
and they're just the most resilient, kind kids I've ever met.
Hmm.
And so just being that safe space,
Yeah.
it just matters.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Because that's that kind of stuff where, kids grow up and they get older, they leave school, they can get their independence and do life as they need to, and they'll remember those moments that were so fundamental to them.
Yeah, I hope so. Yeah, and I hope that they can perpetuate that and provide that,
Yeah,
for other people as they grow.
absolutely. How rewarding. Oh. Is there any one piece of advice you would give to other social workers, whether they're in school social work, whether it's something else?
Um, yeah, I think my advice would just be, just show up and do what you can with what you
Hmm.
have.
Yeah, that's
Because
huge.
I think that's it.
Mhm.
I'm not a fan of the phrase "do your best" because I feel like we just push the limit.
Yes.
So I love the idea of just do what you can.
Hmm. Absolutely. Because so often, I mean, that's how it is in social work is, I mean, our profession sometimes doesn't feel totally like respected at all. We have limited
Oh yeah,
resources, we have limited time. And so we make it work with what we have.
yeah,
Mhm.
yep. Just
Exciting.
do what you can and just let it go.
There we go. Wonderful. Well, Lainey, thank you so much. I feel like this has been really helpful for a lot of people just to get a better understanding of like what school social worker looks like, what they can do as a school social worker, because it's just, I think it's a really interesting role in social work that just encompasses so much of what we do. For those listening, can they continue to follow your journey anywhere?
I don't really post about my job anywhere, just for
Okay.
confidentiality.
Hmm.
Um, I mean, I have an Instagram account. It's just more like personal postings, but I don't mind if people follow it.
Okay. Great. Well, I'll have that linked below to wherever
Okay.
platform people are listening on. And for those listening, if anything resonated with you, please be sure to like, comment, and share. And we will see you next time. Thank you, Lainey.
Hey, thank you.